So, but this is what I said, in Operation Sindoor also, war and politics was happening as a parallel kind of a phenomenon, and it was being exercised also through communication, which I made a mention initially, both direct and indirect communication. So, second important conclusion what I draw from the statement which I initially said, that war is a continuation of policy by other means, is that war is a rational decision. That means, and I also spoke about reason when I said about government takes a rational decision about war. And this takes the decision when it has exhausted all its other instruments of power. So, but then the important question comes in, this whole start point of this particular war was this Pahalgam terror attack. So is terrorism a rational act of warfare? I don't think that's a rational act, because terrorism has no defined logic. It has no politico-military end state. Terrorism is a means and an end in itself. Terrorism is a form of warfare that defines rationality. This is because the terrorist doesn't have anything to lose. He's a non-state actor. So he doesn't have a state. So if he doesn't have a state, he's not worried about territory, people, or the ideology, which form the three important constituents of a state. So this is terrorism absolutely irrational if it is happening in a standalone mode. But what happens when, there is about state-sponsored terrorism? Is this rational? Think that, this seems to be a rational decision when state is employing terrorism as an instrument to achieve political objectives. And say so it's a reasoned kind of a decision the state takes, and so as our adversary is concerned, he's taken the decision that to bleed India by 1,000 cuts. And when I say that this has been a state policy, this I'm not saying. If you go and look at the literature on issues, you'll find Peter Chark, Kristen Fair, who have cited the former Director Generals of ISI, explicating this particular strategy as to how they will bleed India by 1,000 cuts. And this particular doctrine is found in various studies in Pakistan, Staff College, Quetta, etc. So this is a normal talk which happens in Pakistan. And of course, officially we know in the 1965, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto declared a 1,000-year war against India when he addressed the United Nations Security Council. And probably Ziaul Haq gave form to this particular doctrine of 1,000 years war. And someone added that you should add this 1,000 cuts into it. And similar kind of venom was spewed by General Asim Munir against India and Hindus. Speech just few days or weeks before what happened in Pahalgam. So, since this is a rigid decision, it can be also, I believe, that retracted. Because now Pakistan is faced with a different kind of a prospect that he faces military action in case we find terror happening against us. And also, we said that we'll have water as well as, this thing will not flow together. So we have kind of raised the bar. We have connected terror to water, and we have drawn out the new lines for military operations against terror. Sometimes I feel this particular policy also got accentuated after Pakistan acquired nuclear weapons, and they tried to exploit this stability-instability paradox. That's nuclear weapons will provide stability, strategic stability between the two nations, and below that, this terrorism can contain. But of course, what India has done now is there are now two red lines. Between these two red lines, it's opened up the space for conventional operations. So that's a major change which has happened after Sindoor. Let me talk about rationality once again in the context of Operation Bunyan al-Marsus, and which I said, I've said once, twice earlier that in this whole business of war, warfare, or use of force, the military people are the ones who are most rational, because we understand that, war and warfare is very, very unpredictable. And we also probably understand the consequences of war. So that, I think, is important. So although lost by Pakistan on 10th of May at about 1 a.m., its aim was to get down India to its knees in 48 hours. Multiple attacks were lost. And in some manner, they have escalated this conflict, which we had actually hit only terrorist targets, but also into the military domain. From their perspective, it would have been rational in the sense they would have said that you use military means to hit these targets. But it was also rational on their part, operation which they thought they'll continue for 48 hours, folded up in about 8 hours. And on 10th, then they picked up the telephone and said they wanted to talk. And I think that the rationale behind this the realization coming in, stem from two facts. That one is they must have assumed that if they continued this mode, they're likely to lose much more. So hence they picked up the telephone. And second thing, since they had stuck us at multiple fronts, they still did not have the benefit of understanding what they had stuck. So they must have thought they must have stuck, and hence there's time to talk now. And if they don't, they'll tend to lose both. So these were the two factors which would have made them to take, but it's only after, say, 1 or 2 days they would have realized that all their kind of attacks which they had launched against us had not fortified, and they had all kind of failed. And so I think this is what had happened. Second thing is, Indian Armed Forces also demonstrated a lot of rationality. We had informed Pakistan on the day we had done this surgical strikes on 7th. We had done it till from 1105, that's 5, at about 1 o'clock to about 1:30, and 5 minutes later we had rigged up the Director General of Military Operations to say that we have done this, and we have hit only terror targets. Military establishments have been out of the purview of the strikes, and we have ensured that there are no collateral damage, especially civilians, and we need to talk to each other. So that was, I think, a rational decision. And subsequently, when there was a rhetoric from Pak side, we also said that in case Pakistan hits us, hits military establishments, we are going to hit them back, we'll hit them harder, and if they stop, we are going to stop. So when Pakistan did ask for talks and de-escalation, we also at some point of time, not immediately, at some point of time, I would say, did accept what they were saying. So this is what I thought was the political part of war. And now I'll talk about the combat part of war. That's the second part, which I said it had 4 constituents. That's the combatant, the Yodha, the battlefield, combat zone, where the fight takes place. It talks about technology, and fourth is about tactics. So these are the 4 things, I think, important part of warfare. Combatants actually today, earlier we all thought people in uniform, organized military forces are part of combat, but today we have paramilitary forces, mercenaries, contractors, terrorists, jihadis, private companies, big technology. So we had heard about long back about Wagner Group, similarly Blackwater groups. So a lot of security companies provide armed security, mission support, and risk management services not only to corporate houses but also governments. So it's not that combatants are only uniformed people paid for by the government. It's different. And today combatants may also include citizens, neutral citizens, or nations, or netizens rather. And they can take part independently or otherwise based on their support to any ideology in cyber warfare, psychological operations, media outreach, etc. So the concept of this war will be only conducted by combatants which are paid for the government is getting diluted slowly. There are other players who are coming into fray. And second thing is this combat zone. This has expanded phenomenally. What we see that not only we have land, air, traditional domains, and maritime, but we also now have space, cyber, electromagnetic domain. Because a lot of activities took place actually between both of us over 4 days on the electromagnetic domain. Activities also took place in cyber domain. We also had a lot of activities in the domain of perception management, information war, or maybe you can call it cognitive warfare, in which the mindscape, shaping the mind of the people, is more important than the landscape, what happens on land, etc. We also saw the expansion of battle space on the traditional domains. So initially you could see war and warfare, contact warfare, within 5 or 10 kilometers. Today we expanded that battle space phenomenally. When we see the whole length and breadth of Pakistan, it could be under coverage of India's weapon systems, not for any other ranges, but very, very deliberate precision strikes. Some strikes could be as narrow as 2 meters or 3 meters square, at ranges greater than, say, 300 kilometers. That's what has been demonstrated. So that I said, combatants, combat zone, these are the kind of changes which are taking place in future. And I'll dwell upon now the more important part on technology, which I think is becoming very, very important. And the warfare today is at the cusp of, if I could say, a third revolution in military affairs. The first revolution in military affairs was something to do with maneuver warfare, which came about because of advances in ground mobility and air mobility. You could transport people faster. It also was there because of long ranges. The second revolution in military affairs was net-centric warfare, in which battlefield transparency, situational awareness, this became important. Information dominance became important. That came about by the U.S. Armed Forces because of advances in communication technology and computer technologies and ICT. And today we are at the cusp of a third revolution in military affairs, which I have termed as convergence warfare, because what we are seeing is not one technology, but there are a number of technologies which are affecting warfare presently, and they'll happen in future. All of these are heralding a new change in warfare, which is bringing about a change which is disruptive and non-linear. And it's actually occurring at a pace which is unprecedented. And these technologies range from sensor, advanced materials, propulsion, hypersonics, artificial intelligence, big data, advances in cyber, space, all of them. But what happens is generally we take all these advances in technology and consider them as one fact. What I will do is I'll try and identify 4 trends in these technologies to see where warfare is progressing further. So the first trend which I talk about is sensor technologies. And this is ushering in a new level of battlefield transparency and situational awareness in the field of warfare. You see, we have natural and man-made sensors. It's a competition between these two, if you have it, say. So we are about 8 billion people on this earth. So we have 16 billion eyes, actually, as sensors. We're seeing each other. Today, we have maybe having more than 8 billion artificial ISR sensors operating. All of us having a mobile phone, which has got a camera, you've got a laptop, iPad, etc., which has got a sensor. There are a large number of cameras over here. There are sensors of this room, which are capturing those images. You go outside on this road, there are a number of sensors over here. There are sensors deployed in air, there are sensors deployed in space, there are sensors deployed undersea, there are sensors deployed in. So it's not only the range of sensors, but the deployment of sensors is much more than what natural way you can do it. It's also the type of sensor. We only had, say, 5 senses, that is touch, hearing, smell, vision, and taste. That's all. But today the kind of sensors we have is seismic, chemical, biological, optical, SAR, infrared, ELINT, AIS, acoustics, ultrasonic, magnetic, electromagnetic, quantum, atomic, radio frequency. So we've overtaken nature, actually, in numbers, quality, deployment, all everywhere. What is this going to lead us to? This is going to lead us to absolute transparency. So today, there cannot be anything like surprise in battlefield. Everything's open. And second thing, I think today, when we talk about if there's no surprise, then the only way you can do it by deceiving him, probably. You'll have to think of different kind of techniques in warfare. The second trend, I think, is related to speed, velocity. I call it celerity. And this segment is driven by advances in hypersonics, whether it is guide or cruise. We saw that BrahMos missile at 2.8 Mach. You can have today missiles at 10, 7, 8 Mach flying. We also have fractional orbital systems. Along with this, what's happening is stealth technologies are coming in, so it becomes very difficult to detect. In any case, you start having drones, which are very, very small, and you can have drones in swarms. So there are no radar systems which are actually made to track large aircrafts moving at a reasonable speed of 1 or 2 Mach. Then you have one hand hypersonic weapons which are following different kind of trajectories, and on the other hand you have drones which are as small as this. And do this also means there are no radars which can actually track it, and then you can move it in swarms, etc. So what's happening is all this in combination, lower radar signatures, high speeds, and intelligent routing, etc., are making these kind of threats invisible, inaudible, undetectable, and hence untargetable. So you're kind of vulnerable everywhere. So on one end, we can see the range of this action. So what you're introducing is kind of non-linearity in ultimate form of non-linearity. You can have a contact battle at 1 or 2 kilometers, and then you can have a battle which is being fought at 300 kilometers or 250 kilometers. So that's the kind of unlinearity, and with impunity you can do it, because it's very difficult for the opposition to actually devise a system to guard against it or to hit against it, unless he's synchronized his systems in a very, very effective kind of a manner. So it's like I said, ultimate non-linearity and expansion of battle space. So it will also probably, maybe we'll have to think of large platforms like large ships, tanks, etc., because these become very vulnerable. And your planning and preparation, coordination for such kind of a defensive acts will also require a lot of thought in future. We may have to require a layered kind of a resilient defenses in depth to ward against these kind of threats. The third important trend which I see is something to do with robotics and automation. And this includes unmanned systems, autonomous systems, along with, now you have manned and unmanned only. You'll have one manned aircraft with operating 2 or 3 unmanned aircrafts along with it. One manned tank will do 2, 3 unmanned kind of thing, operating in a collaborative kind of an environment.